Welcome into the Fantasy Football Forge. My name is Steve, and it is time to look at 10 running backs that you should be avoiding in this draft based on their ADP. And this list is going to go in some sort of order. I'm trying to, it looks like maybe from the least difference between myself and ADP to the most difference between myself and the ADP, if I'm reading this correctly, if I remember correctly. So guys, I hope you enjoy this. I hope you get something from it. Obviously, not going to agree with everything in the video. Let me know what you disagree with. I am always open to differing opinions. Sometimes they do change my thoughts on something. Sometimes it's not something I thought of, and at this point in the offseason especially, rankings are still quite fluid, so if you want to see what they are, they do get updated all the time at the link that's up and down in the description to my website where the rankings are. So that link will bring you there for every position. Got the rankings, and they get updated fairly regularly. That's going to bring us on to the running backs here. So who are we avoiding? This isn't a personal attack on any of these running backs or any of these teams. It's just that I personally think, hey, maybe the ADP is a little too high. So Kenneth Walker, as you can see over there, is going to be the first victim in this video. I have him ranked 20th. ADP on him is 15th, which, to be fair, is right in line with his 2024 performance. But as I like to say with these videos, guys, we're trying to predict the future. The past is our best predictor for that, but we know that it's still not going to be accurate, and things are going to change from last year to this year for most players. For me, I'm willing to take a gamble on several of the incoming rookies that we expect to come into starting jobs and Alvin Kamara over Kenneth Walker. Those are the players basically that I have ranked higher that's making up this difference here. And we'll get to some of those. I believe those running backs are probably in the other video, the targets video. So, Alvin Kamara, running back 6 via average fantasy points week 1 through 17 last year, running back 8 via my consistency rankings. Both of those numbers are higher than Kenneth Walker's, which is 14th and 16th respectively. Of course, Kenneth Walker is coming into his prime at this age in his career, whereas Alvin Kamara is coming out of his prime. So I totally get that argument if you say, hey, I'm going to attack the younger guy on probably the better offense as well, right? Understandable. I get it. I'm not sitting here trying to convince you of otherwise, or am I? I guess I kind of am. Just vaguely. I'm really not trying to convince you of otherwise, because I'm not giving you an argument. That's just how I have them ranked based on last year's production. Alvin Kamara still had a fantastic season, and he's good, and he might be younger than you expect. He's still 29 years old. I could have sworn he's like 32 by this point, but he's ageless. That's going to bring us on to the next avoid, being Jonathan Taylor. This hurts to say. I was one of the guys. He was a target for mine his rookie season or second year in the league, and he totally paid off then. It hasn't been quite the same. So I have him ranked 13th. He's going 8th, which is a little bit high versus his 2024 production, where he ranked anywhere from 8th to 13th. So, literally right in there, depending on how you want to look at the season. 8th via average fantasy points per week, 13th via consistency rankings. Consistency rankings of mine, I will always just plug this real quick, do perform better than the average fantasy points per week, which is also a stat that I do care about, I do like, but just shameless plug here, my consistency rankings do perform better than in terms of letting you know which player helped you to win more games along the season, which player scored more points, more games throughout the year. Are we really expecting that this Indianapolis Colts offense will improve from last season? I'm feeling like it's going to be rather stagnant from where it was last year. No growth, no real reduction, maybe something around what we got last season. Game flow and touchdown reliance concern me on a week in and week out basis for JT, which which was their last season apparently via my consistency rankings compared to the average fantasy points per week. I would rather have the starting running back on better offenses, players being Josh Jacobs, Bucky Irving, Chase Brown, Kyren Williams, and James Cook by a narrow margin. Those are the 5 players that I have ranked differently via my ADP than where you're taking Jonathan Taylor over those players. I'm taking those players over JT. That's simple. That's going to bring us on to David Montgomery. Average draft position, 23. He is my 30th ranked running back. Average draft position 23, however, is low compared to his 2024 performance and his 2023 performance. He's coming off a really, really good last 2 years where I didn't write it down. I don't know. Has he been top 10? He's been fantastic. There is a little bit of a hiccup coming in. New offensive coordinator. Things are going to be changing. Okay? They always do. Touchdown reliance. That's a thing for David Montgomery. Will he continue to get 12 or 13 touchdowns, which are the amount of touchdowns he's had these last 2 seasons? Those are high touchdown totals. It's tough to expect that to continue to that extreme, but it very well could, obviously. Low opportunity share. 35th in 2024 at 47%. 27th in carries per game, and 32nd in targets per game. I am expecting changes and minor growing pains in this offense, none of which I expect will benefit or improve David Montgomery from last year. And you know what? You guys are in agreement with that as well. You're not taking him, not drafting him as highly as he performed last year. It's a projection. I'm okay if you disagree with me. At least now you're aware of what you might be signing up for. You know, he needs those touchdowns, and once again, I think if anything, he has less usage than he's had over the last 2 years, and the new offensive coordinator leans on Jahmyr Gibbs all the more. No guarantees there. We'll find out when the season gets going. That's going to bring us on to Chuba Hubbard. I have him ranked 26th. He's going 18th overall, which is on par with my consistency rankings from 2024. So my consistency rankings are agreeing with you based on historical performance. He was literally all that this team had last offseason on their offense, in the running game at the very least there. They brought in Rico Dowdle, and they drafted Trevor Etienne in the 4th round, which really is more like the 3rd round, given how strong that this running back class was. Running backs tended to go a little bit later than they might have in other running back draft classes. Teams just tended to let that position's talent fall a little bit because there was such an abundance of it. Now, look, personally, I didn't have Trevor Etienne as a 4th round prospect. I'm not too afraid of him killing Chuba Hubbard in fantasy football this season, but it is very possible that he could be the best running back in that room because, well, frankly, we'll get to it. We'll get to where I am on Chuba Hubbard historically, but that possibility scares me for a guy that I'm going to be drafting as a surefire running back 2. High running back 2, mid running back 2 there, on an offense that might be middling in the league at best. They were 25th via EPA in 2024. Little caveat to that, though. It did improve as the season went along, and they were much better than that throughout the second half of the season. Maybe I'm just a Chuba hater, and I am. I'll admit that, and it's nothing to do with Chuba Hubbard. I am, unfortunately, and I totally look forward to being wrong again. Once again, I am a fan of players playing well. I don't like to see these guys fail in their careers. I'm happy for all of them that do well, for the most part. Obviously, some of them have off-field stuff that maybe don't make me as happy for them, but whatever, good for you in your career. But for those of you who do choose to believe in him, absolutely great for you. If he does pay off for you wherever you draft him, my team will still be better than yours, even if you're right on Chuba. That's going to bring us on to our next avoid here in TreVeyon Henderson. And look, I was right up there with you guys originally with my ranking of TreVeyon Henderson. You're taking him at running back 21. I've got him all the way back at running back 28. Let's see what I wrote about this. He's a rookie, by the way. He went 38th overall in the NFL draft, so quite high. That's fantastic. And I liked him a lot in the pre-draft process. He was one of a few running backs who I had ranked tied as my 3rd favorite running back, and I believe I had him at the top of that list, even though I had him tied. In a vertical list, you got to put him somewhere. So I had TreVeyon at the top of that list. I originally, like I said, I had him ranked right about at his ADP. However, all the news so far this offseason is that Ramondre Stevenson will remain the starting running back for the Patriots. And frankly, that does add up to the scouting report of many for Henderson. Not exactly my scouting report, but the scouting report of, I would say, the majority of people's scouting reports on him. They viewed him similarly to how they've viewed Chase Brown and Devon Achane in the past as guys who cannot be a team's bell cow back. Now, I say that Henderson can be just that, as I said that for both Chase Brown and Devon Achane could be. And look at how amazing that turned out for both of those two in fantasy football, right? So you get the opportunity, and they took it, they ran with it, and they've been fantastic. Still, this is not a top NFL offense, and if Ramondre is indeed the starter, which is what I'm expecting currently with my ranking, then TreVeyon is going to have to be very highly efficient. It's always possible. I definitely think that he could be too, given who he is, his play style, etc. That would make sense. He is a big chunk getter of a running back, big play maker. But he'll almost certainly be inconsistent for as long as he's playing behind Ramondre Stevenson, just due to a limit in opportunities. And opportunities, as always, are king in fantasy football. I might move him back up a little bit in my rankings, but running back 21 is almost certainly drafting him at his ceiling for, once again, as long as he is the RB2 in New England. Personally, I don't like to draft guys at their ceilings because that means that the odds are that they won't live up to where I drafted them. Most guys don't reach their theoretical ceiling in a season. Let's move on to my running back 27, Joe Mixon. You guys are taking him on average at running back 19, which is low compared to his 2024 season, which produced a running back 5 to running back 11. My consistency rankings had him as a running back 11. Average fantasy points per week had him at running back 5. That's weeks 1 through 17. I don't care about week 18. The good about Joe Mixon. The new offensive coordinator there, he's going to continue to put a focus on the rushing attack. No different than Bobby Slowick did, except completely different in how he's going to execute that rushing attack. And that's obviously good for running backs on a team. The more, once again, opportunities king. The more that a team rushes, the more that the running backs have opportunities. The more opportunities, the more fantasy points potential that there is for that player to get in any given week. My concern here, they added Nick Chubb onto this roster. Now, if you believe that Nick Chubb is completely washed and that there's no competition to Joe Mixon from Nick Chubb coming onto this team, first of all, that's understandable. I get it. And you can just go on, fast forward a minute to the next player because I'm not going to convince you of otherwise here. I, however, am expecting Nick Chubb to take a decent chunk of the workload in this backfield. If there is anyone that I would bet on returning to his previous form after a major injury, it is Nick Chubb. I mean, the dude is just, he's a dude. He's the most dude that there probably is. I think that there's a very real chance that Joe Mixon becomes the third down, 4-minute, 2-minute drill back for this team, with the added benefit of coming onto the field for a drive or two to give Nick Chubb a breather, / to just help keep Nick Chubb more fresh as he is getting more advanced in age. Nonetheless, though, I'm quite concerned about that possibility, and I'm basically betting on that becoming the reality. I think that that's how this backfield works. I've predicted backfields correctly and incorrectly before, so I may be right, I might be wrong. I have a 50-50 shot at that, roughly. That's going to bring us on to running back 46 in my rankings, Zach Charbonnet. You're taking him all the way up at running back 37. And if you're drafting him there, you are highly anticipating that Ken Walker will get injured for a fairly significant chunk of time. Seattle struggled to establish the run last season, so just right off the bat, there's a little bit of an issue. This offensive line will probably be better than it was last year, but it's still going to be like mediocre at best if everything goes, not swell, but swimmingly well enough. There are backup running backs that I want more than Zach Charbonnet, and at running back 37, you're even taking him over some running backs who have a path to becoming a team's starting running back, which I just don't want to do. Javonte Williams and Ramondre Stevenson are the first two that come to my mind when I think of guys who you are taking Zach Charbonnet over, who have the potential. One of them literally is the starting running back for an NFL team currently. If you're taking him thinking that he'll get a lot of third down work, etc., then you're taking him over a guy like Rachaad White, who had a significant amount more larger workload than Zach Charbonnet did last year. Let's compare those two. Zach Charbonnet had the luxury of being the primary back for 6 games. Remember that as we look at these numbers. Rachaad White was a part of a shared backfield all season long, He didn't have that 6 games where he was the only guy. And he still ranked higher in 2 very important usage categories, which, once again, opportunities are king, usage equaling opportunities here. White ranked 32nd compared to Charbonnet, who ranked 35th in rushing attempts per game, opportunities on the ground. And White ranked 9th compared to Zach Charbonnet's ranking of 15th in targets per game. Different offense there this year. We'll see if that changes. But I believe that you are just simply taking Zach Charbonnet too high right now at running back 37. Of course, you yourself are making some projections, some expectations. I do the same thing. Things change every year in the NFL. However, I think what you're doing at running back 37 is drafting him projecting that Ken Walker will not only be injured for the same amount of games last year, but actually going to be injured for even more games than he was last season, which is a bet that I don't really like to take. That's going to bring us on to my 41st ranked running back, Jaylen Warren, ADP running back 31. Jaylen Warren finished last season just shy of running back 30 on the season, also known as a detriment to your fantasy team. Could he be in line for an increased workload? Obviously, that's quite possible. But personally, I think that their 3rd round pick, Caleb Johnson, will come in and take Najee Harris's role completely. If that happens, that of course means that Warren's role does not increase outside of the team's rushing attempts and workload in general, just increasing overall, which could happen, of course. Even then, though, it's still partially dependent on game scenarios and more opportunities given the role that Jaylen Warren has in this offense coming up than last season. And then you think of what the ceiling of the Pittsburgh Steelers offense is. And, I mean, it's not anywhere near a top 10 offense, right? Even if everything goes well. I'm talking especially for, like, production. I guess maybe the running game, maybe that is a possibility. But overall, in terms of, like, touchdown opportunities, the big points getters, I don't think so. There's 32 starting running backs in this league. Why are we drafting, I believe, a running back 2 at running back 31 on a mid-tier offense if everything goes right? This offense doesn't need to score 24 points a game or more in order to win games like most teams do in the modern NFL. The Steelers expect to win games by only putting up 17 points on the board from their offense. That's all that they need, and their defense should do the rest of the heavy lifting, and they can win most games throughout the season. That's their identity. That's what it's been for some time now. Jaylen Warren, look, like I said, I mean, this is not an indictment on the player. I think that Jaylen Warren is a fantastic football player. I think any team would love to have him on their roster. He does a lot of the dirty work really, really well. I don't think that he's a mid-tier flex option in fantasy football, though. My advice would be to take shots on guys with higher ceilings over Warren. I think that is going to pay off for you in the long term, or at the least, you won't be stuck with a running back 40 on your bench all season, just good enough that you can't cut him, but just poor enough that you never actually play him. Even in weeks where you almost could play him, you go out and you grab somebody off of the waiver wire to replace your injured back that you were thinking that you might have to play Jaylen Warren over that week. I don't really like those guys. They are frustrating to own, and believe me, I've owned plenty of them. Let's go on to owned. I hate saying owned. All right, J.K. Dobbins over there. He is my 54th ranked running back, average drafted position 38th running back. That's way too low compared to his 2024 fantasy season, where he finished as running back 14 or 17, based on, which metric you want to use. But of course, it's an entirely different situation for him this year. There's no receiving upside to J.K. Dobbins. He just never has had any kind of receiving upside, and that is immediately a concern for a running back 2 on an NFL roster for fantasy football purposes. Remember, the Broncos drafted R.J. Harvey in the 2nd round. This is another defensive first team. The offense will be fine, but they're not a high-powered offense that's going to need to be putting up 38 points a week in order for them to win, not too unlike the Pittsburgh Steelers here. This is the first year that I am the low man on J.K. Dobbins. I was higher on him than the public every other year, at least to my memory. And while he was healthy, I have always been correct about that, while he's been healthy, but I think that this is R.J. Harvey's backfield first. Sean Payton has always preferred the receiving back over the plotting type of back. J.K. Dobbins probably gets the most work when they're working from a positive game script, which I do expect will happen fairly often this season. They have a fantastic defense, possibly the best defense in the league. But a lot of that work is also going to be the tough yards against loaded boxes when they're trying to whittle away the clock and just, wear down the game. They're not trying to get a touchdown. Once again, the defense is in a place where it's going to make it much harder for J.K. Dobbins to break out and get a touchdown as well. I get the argument for J.K. Dobbins. I'm just trying to warn you that I don't think that it's going to end up working well for you if you draft him that high. I think that he eats up a roster spot for you without enough ceiling upside or potential. An injury to R.J. Harvey could always change that, but once again, Sean Payton wants to run this offense through a receiving back, which Dobbins definitely is not, which means that even with an injury to R.J. Harvey, I'm not so sure that Dobbins just comes in and he's not just still a part of a heavy split anyways. Maybe he gets a little bit more work, but still part of a heavy split. That's going to bring us on to the next running back in this video. The final running back in this video is Najee Harris, my 51st ranked running back, ADP 32. And I do not get ADP 32. Omarion Hampton was drafted 22nd overall in the NFL draft. I fully expect Omarion to be the lead back here. Najee certainly deserves to be drafted as one of the better backups with, the most potential upside if there is an injury ahead of him on a roster. For that reason, I'm fine with him being taken higher than the running back 51. He'll probably end up higher in my rankings than that, as some other backfields situations get more cemented the closer that we get to the season. For instance, I currently have Dylan Sampson ranked ahead of Najee Harris because I do think that the chance of Dylan Sampson winning the running back one role for his team, the Cleveland Browns, is higher than it is for Najee Harris. I think there's a 0% chance that Najee Harris beats Omarion Hampton out for the starting running back on the Los Angeles Chargers. But take a guy like Justice Hill. I have him, he's ADP running back 57. Justice Hill gets a decent amount of work for a running back too. For instance, he ranked 11th among all running backs in receiving yards last year. In the event that the starting running back goes down for both the Ravens and the Chargers, I would probably rather have the backup running back on the Ravens. I'm not saying that Najee Harris and Hill are apple-to-apple comparisons, but I don't think that the difference between them is 25 draft spots. ADP 32 for Najee, ADP 57 for Justice Hill. I might have Najee Harris, once again, a little bit too low at this point in the offseason, but running back 32, I believe, is definitely too high. Do you really think that the backup running back on the Chargers is better than the starter on the Patriots, is better than the starter for the New York Giants, is better than the starter for the Jacksonville Jaguars, the starter for the Dallas Cowboys, better than a running back whose situation is the same as it was last year and finished as the running back 21 via the average fantasy points per week, better than last year's running back 29, who's in a situation that many people think has actually improved since last year. I didn't write down those last two running backs. I know that last one is I had it and then I lost it. The receiving back, the RB2 there in Washington, Austin Eckler. And then the other one, what was that? A running back whose situation is the same as last year's and finished as a running back 21 via average. That cannot. My initial thought was that would be Aaron Jones, but that can't be it. I don't remember the name of that running back. My bad. But maybe, just maybe, he's better than one or two of those players at the end of the year, but certainly not all of them. And I would argue that I'd rather take a shot on all of them over Najee. That's why I have them ranked higher than Najee. So there we go. Those are my top 10 running backs that are, I think a little bit too highly ranked. I gotta say it. All right, guys, thank you very much for tuning on in. There's going to be a running back video that may have come out already or will come out after this, where I'm talking about running backs that you need to target. Wide receiver videos, both target and avoid, should have already come out. The wide receivers video is actually more like a values than targets video. And eventually, or maybe already out there, is a tight end video, which has both avoids and targets in it. So, do the YouTube things. If you like the video, let me know in the comments. What did you like? What didn't you like? Or I should say, agree with, disagree with me here in this video. Peace out.